My name is Bill Dayhut. I'm a Children's Inn board member and clinical director of the National Cancer Institute, as well as the scientific director for clinical research at the NCI Center for Cancer Research. I am so excited to welcome you to this afternoon's celebration of 30 years of hope and discovery in my first official role as a Children's Inn's board member. I joined the Inn's board last fall because the Children's Inn's tremendous impact on the lives of young NIH patients, including NCI patients who are dealing with the most difficult to treat cancer diagnosis. The Children's Inn is an invaluable NIH partner. NCI patients make up the largest number of patients at the NIH Clinical Center, and so not surprisingly, they've made the largest group of children and young adults staying at the Inn throughout the 30-year history. I am really proud to strengthen this strong partnership through my volunteer role in the Inn's board, and I'm really working with the Inn to transform many more young patients' lives. Today, I look forward to celebrating the Inn's 30th anniversary with you through the inspiring stories of discovery made possible by NCI research and how it contributes to our understanding and the treatment of the most difficult to treat cancers in pediatric patients. Thank you to Synergy for producing today's event and the entire Discovery series. I would also like to recognize Gender Dynamics Information Technology, GDIT, for sponsoring today's event. Thank you. Today we'll hear from my boss, the NCI director, Dr. Ned Sharpless, and we'll also hear from Terran Dupree, a young woman at the age of 14 who was diagnosed with mesothelioma, a cancer that is usually seen in older men and is notoriously difficult to treat. We'll also hear from her father, Terrance, who is an NCI patient as well. As many of you know, the Children's Inn has a long history of bipartisan congressional support. It actually started with the involvement of a group of congressional spouses who raised crucial funds for the Inn, and we're proud that some of the individual members of the group continue to support this important cause today. The Inn has also continues to be able to count on strong congressional support from legislators of both parties, legislators who care about children and families with rare diseases and NIH research. We'll start today with messages from members of Congress who are champions of the NIH. Let's hear from Representative Troy Balderson of Ohio and Senator Shelley Capito of West Virginia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Senator Shelley Capito from the great state of West Virginia. First, I'd like to thank the NIH leadership, NCI supporters, and all of the brave children and families at NIH and the Children's Inn. For over 30 years, the Children's Inn at NIH has given families the community and comfort they need during what could be the most difficult times in their lives. Having this support available at one of our nation's premier institutions helps us pursue cures to the harshest diseases, to diagnose the undiagnosable, and to fulfill the hope that NIH has always stood for. I want you to know that I stand as your partner on the federal level. I will continue to do my part to make sure that the resources are available for our children when they need them the most. So, to all of the families at the Inn and NIH, I admire your courage and strength more than you know. You all are warriors and will be in my thoughts and prayers today and every day. Thank you all for giving me the chance to speak with all of you today. I hope you enjoy the day and the event. Take care, everybody.
Hello, this is Congressman Troy Balderson, and I'm honored to join in celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Children's Inn at the National Institute of Health. The NIH has been an exceptional partner to numerous hospitals in Central Ohio, most notably Nationwide Children's Hospital, which is one of the leading pediatrics research centers in the nation. After witnessing firsthand the impact that NIH research has had in the fight against devastating pediatric illnesses affecting both children and the ones who care for them, I am proud to support the NIH and the Children's Inn. Medical breakthroughs and treatments made possible by the NIH in partnership with organizations like the National Cancer Institute have been crucial in the fight against pediatric cancers. As the leader in cancer research funding, especially for children, the National Cancer Institute is pioneering new innovative research aimed at defeating some of the most devastating illnesses. Quality lodging and support services provided by Children's Inn has done wonders for cancer research and offers a renewed peace of mind for families, allowing them to focus on what's most important, caring for these young patients while they undergo treatment. This facility allows families to travel long distances to get the treatment they need while still feeling like they never left home. I am always amazed by the brave young children battling these diseases and their extraordinary resilience. I will continue to proudly support the NIH and the Children's Inn.
A big thank you to Senator Capito and Representative Balderson for their very kind words of support. I'm now pleased to introduce Dr. Susan Castillo, a Senior Director at GDIT. Senator Castillo is responsible for GDIT's NIH business area in the federal health sector. She's a highly accomplished leader with a proven record of managing complex information technology, life sciences, and bioinformatic projects. Her project portfolio specializes in supporting the NIH with scientific operations and enterprise solutions. Dr. Castillo received her Master of Science degree from the University of Minnesota, her doctorate degree in genetics from Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia, and completed a postdoc fellowship at the NIH. She's also been actively supporting the Children's Inn at NIH now for over 20 years. But briefly, before I hand it over to Susan, I'd like to explain how to submit questions. If you have questions for our presenters, please just simply add them in the Q&A box. If your question is for a specific presenter, please add their name to your question. We will do our very best to answer as many questions during the event as possible. And now, here's Dr. Susan Castillo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deha. It is truly an honor for me to be a part of this special 30 years celebration for the Inn. The Inn plays such a caring role for patients who are invited to the NIH to participate in clinical trials. Having a home away from home provides much needed comfort and support to the families. GDIT, the company where I work, brings critical thinkers and innovators together with cutting-edge technologies to solve some of the world's biggest challenges. At NIH, we are delivering bioinformatics solutions, research support, and IT systems and services that enable NIH to meet its goal in improving our health. Our commitment to enriching communities in which we live, work, and play includes many years of volunteering at the Children's Inn. We have hosted monthly family dinners. We've helped coordinate fundraisers to help the Inn purchase new kitchen equipment. We have engaging teams in creating thoughtful treasures for the children in their mailboxes. And even during the pandemic, we've had readers participate in virtual storytelling. For us, the Inn is a part of who we are. We are motivated to engage in activities that support the Inn's effort to create a place like home for the residents. I know I speak for all of us when I say we can't wait to get back inside to safely cook our first meal for the returning families. Shortly, we will hear from NCI Director Dr. Sharpless, and NCI patient Terran and her father Terrance. But before we hear from our speakers, let's first hear from two additional legislators, Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island and Representative Rosa Delauro of Connecticut.
Thank you for making a world of difference, for being a port in a storm and a home away from home, for kids facing big odds and parents who are dealing with a world turned upside down. I understand the theme for this year's anniversary is 30 years of hope and discovery. Hope is our motto in Rhode Island. We even have it stitched into our flag. And the Inn certainly provides lots of hope, comfort, and joy. And the discovery and innovation NIH does is nothing short of astounding. But I think one other key word I'd add is this: family. To me, the Inn is all about families. It's about helping families get through tough times together and allowing kids, parents, and siblings to be together, supporting one another and doing what families do best. And the Inn wouldn't have become a reality were it not for the Dingle family. So let me recognize Congresswoman Debbie Dingle and her late great husband and my colleague, John Dingle. And of course, I salute Dr. Sharpless, the Inn, and the amazing people who work at NIH and the National Cancer Institute. You save lives, you change lives, and you continue to improve care and treatment for young patients. It's been a while since I've had a chance to visit the Inn, but when the pandemic passes, I can't wait to go back and visit my friends at the Inn. Thank you, And here's to another 30 great years of hope, discovery, and family.
Hello, this is Congresswoman Rosa Delauro, and thank you to the National Institutes of Health for everything you do. It is an honor to join you as we celebrate 30 years of hope and discovery. The Children's Inn has consistently met the needs of children, providing refuge, relief, and comfort to families across America. You are participating in groundbreaking research, and I am moved by the work you do each day. This is too important to me. Before I was ever a member of Congress, I was a survivor of ovarian cancer. I was lucky. My cancer was found by chance in its earliest stage. I have now been cancer-free for 35 years. I feel I was given a gift of extra time on this earth and that I should make the most of it. But even more than that, it is an affirmation of the power of the human spirit. It is a chance to remember those who we love and to find strength in each other for the continuing to battle against all illness. As a co-founder of the Congressional Baby Caucus, I know firsthand the importance of keeping children's health needs front and center. Because of NIH research, childhood cancer mortality decreased 50% in 35 years. We have a vaccine to prevent cervical cancer, and now a vaccine for the COVID-19 pandemic. It is amazing. So I am proud that the Congress has increased NIH funding by $11.6 billion, or 39% over the past 5 years. Last year alone, the Congress provided NIH an additional $2.6 billion increase from 2019 to 2020. Additionally, the National Cancer Institute will continue a pediatric cancer agreement that gives $30 million for the implementation of the STAR Act to expand existing biorepositories for childhood cancer. The agreement also aims to collect and maintain relevant clinical, biological, and demographic information on all children, adolescents, and young adults with cancer to help them all in need. So the fight continues, and I will always be a warrior right there on the front lines with you. And I am very glad to have you all by my side. I look forward to everything we can continue to accomplish for children in the Congress, in Connecticut, and across the country in the weeks, months, and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Delauro and Senator Reed. We appreciate your kind remarks and how heartfelt they really are. Now I would like to introduce one of our special Children's Inn families. Terran was 14 years old when one day she fainted at school and was rushed to the emergency room. There, doctors made a terrifying discovery. Let's watch a brief video in which Terran and her father recount how she received her diagnosis and what motivated the family to participate in NCI clinical trials.
I passed out at school. It was my freshman year of high school. I was taken by ambulance to the ER. They did a full body scan, and that's when they found a tumor in my abdomen.
She was diagnosed with mesothelioma.
The NIH, they said that they could help. On September 24th, 2014, I had my surgery to get rid of my tumor. They still saw, cellular activity in my abdomen, but the tumor was gone.
My trial was newly opening to study a drug called pexidartinib.
It didn't take long for the doctors to see improvement.
It was tough watching her go through her sickness and seeing some of the things that she had to deal with. So that was tough, but we're grateful that she is still with us this day.
So Terran is amazing, and she is doing very well.
The Children's Inn and their energy, you honestly can't really help but to fall in love with it.
We just want to say thank you for everything that you all do.
So for Terran, the Children's Inn has been such a gift, and in particular, it's been like a place like home for her.
It takes brave young people like Terran and the dedicated cancer researchers and clinicians at the NCI to make new cancer therapies possible. Cancer therapies that offer new hope where there was little before. It is my honor this afternoon and pleasure now to introduce Dr. Sharpless. Dr. Sharpless has been the NCI director since October 2017. And in 2019, he served as the acting head of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for 7 months before returning to the NCI. Prior to joining the National Cancer Institute, Dr. Sharpless served as the director of the Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center at the University of North Carolina. He has authored more than 160 original scientific papers, reviews, and book chapters. He's an inventor on 10 patents and co-founder of 2 clinical stage biotechnology companies. Please join with me in welcoming Dr. Sharpless.
Well, thank you for the welcome, Susan. It's great to be here. It's really an honor to speak again at the Children's Inn, which is such an important partner for everything we do at the NIH and the NCI. I'd like to thank General Dynamics IT for sponsoring this wonderful event. A lot has changed since I think the last time I did an event for the Children's Inn, given the pandemic. And I hope that we can return soon to doing these things in person. I believe the last time I did this, it was in a big grand ballroom and I was wearing a tux, and this is a little different today. I'm thrilled to have Representatives Rosa Delauro and Troy Balderson and Senators Shelley Capito and Jack Reed join us with their very impressive messages of support today. As Representative Balderson mentioned, our research collaborations across the country, including places like Nationwide Children's Hospital, are really critical partners in pursuing childhood cancer research advances. I want to thank Senators Reed and Capito, along with Congresswoman Delauro, and their colleagues on the House and Senate Appropriations Committees for the continued commitment that Representative Delauro mentioned to the NIH, the NCI, and to childhood cancer research in particular. As Congresswoman Delauro mentioned, the sustained funding increases that the appropriators in Congress have provided for NIH and for the Children's Inn allow us to support the most promising new research opportunities to improve the health and lives of people facing cancer. At NCI, we are especially grateful for their support for the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative and for the research to implement the Childhood Cancer Survivorship, Treatment, Access, and Research Act. That's the STAR Act that Congresswoman Delauro mentioned. Through the STAR Act, Senators Reed and Capito have been champions for critical efforts to advance childhood cancer survivorship and biospecimen collection efforts. These efforts are highly complementary to other work the National Cancer Institute does, including the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, and I will talk more about these items today. I want to thank Terran and her dad, Terrance. It takes a lot of faith and trust for a family to volunteer to be the first person to try a new experimental therapy. As my colleague, Dr. Rosie Kaplan mentioned, it is the goodness of their hearts, their generosity that makes this kind of research possible. And so we are so encouraged to see not only has the safe therapy for children, but that it continues to benefit Terran directly. We have heard a lot about the unique environment the Inn provides for patients and families, and that's the activities and the support and the camaraderie. It's truly served as a place like home, if you will, for children like Terran and so many others that have been able to take a break from these long days of treatment at the NIH Clinical Center and have the opportunity there to just be children again. For some patients with rare cancers and other rare diseases, coming to the NIH and staying at the Inn can mean that for the first time in their lives, they're really meeting other people with the same conditions. And this can really have a very profound effect on patients. Suddenly, there's this sense of not being so alone and so isolated. So that's another important thing the Children's Inn does to help deliver on our mission to provide great care for our patients. In addition to helping improve the therapeutic milieu for the NIH Clinical Center, the Children's Inn is a truly important partner in discovery with the National Cancer Institute. So I'm told that in 2020, more than 60% of the children staying at the Inn were patients on NCI trials. Now, of course, this is an artifact of COVID. In a more normal year, that number would be closer to 30%, but you can still see that this is really a vital support for the NCI's clinical trials mission, and we would not be able to do these trials really without the help of the Children's Inn. So I think it's not a stretch at all to say that the Children's Inn makes some of our most important work possible, and we are very grateful for this collaboration. This year, it marks the 50th anniversary of the National Cancer Act of 1971. So in addition to the Children's Inn having an anniversary, the NCI is having an anniversary. I think many of you can think of those iconic black and white photos of Mary Lasker and Richard Nixon and others, committing the nation to progress against cancer back in the early 70s. NCI is using this anniversary to reflect on what has been achieved, but where we still have a lot more to do, where our progress to date has been frustratingly slow. When it comes to childhood cancer, there has been some good news. We have made really great progress in cancers like childhood acute lymphoblastic leukemia. That was a disease that in 1975 had a survival rate of close to 50%, and now we cure more than 90% of patients with that disease. But there are still some deadly childhood cancers for which we have very few treatment options, like the brain tumor diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. This is DIPG, which is a long-term survival rate that is effectively less than 1%. Far too many families are devastated by the tragedies of these very difficult to treat cancers. But in the face of cancer's tragedy, I believe there is much hope for the future. At NCI, we are hard at work building the future of childhood cancer research so that children like Terran and their families can have hope if a cancer diagnosis comes up, or maybe they even never have to face that diagnosis at all if we can make advances in prevention and screening. And as we do this, we're now vowing to commemorate the 50th anniversary that nothing will stop us. That is the theme of this anniversary, stating loudly and clearly that nothing will stop us in our work to save more children, more families, more futures from the scourge of cancer. When I look to the future, there are several reasons I have hope, not just that we can help some people a little bit, but that we can really do what the president recently said. To paraphrase President Biden, we want to end cancer as we know it. And by that, we also include ending childhood cancer as we know it. The first reason to be hopeful, I think, is the major investments we are making to put the building blocks in place that can greatly increase the velocity of childhood cancer research. And I will highlight two initiatives here: the Cancer Moonshot and the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, or the CCDI. As part of the Moonshot, Congress authorized $1.8 billion for 7 years to accelerate cancer research. And the NCI is leading research that is in many critical areas and where we are already seeing some very exciting results. So through the Moonshot, for example, we have created the Pediatric Immunotherapy Discovery and Development Network, or the PIDDN, which works to advance immunotherapy research for children and adolescents with cancer. And the idea is to use the power of the immune system, which has been very successful in treating certain types of adult cancers, but to use the immune system then to turn it into a successful therapy for childhood cancer as well. Another initiative supported by the Moonshot is called MyPart, which stands for My Pediatric and Adult Rare Tumor Network. And this is a group of scientists, patients, family members, advocates, and healthcare providers who are working on childhood, teen, and young adult rare tumors that have no cures. While childhood cancers represent the leading cause of death in children over the age of 1, they are collectively rare compared to cancers in adults, and comprising approximately 1 to 3% of cancers diagnosed annually in the United States. And this makes them somewhat difficult to study. So MyPart, the network, takes this on by establishing specialized rare tumor clinics, bringing patients from across the country to the clinical center at NIH, and in many cases to the Children's Inn. It's true across cancer research, but especially in childhood cancer, that to accelerate progress, we need to share data and resources and insights more quickly. And so the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, or the CCDI, which is now beginning its second year, is focused on doing just that. Through the CCDI, the NCI is engaging with researchers, clinicians, policymakers, and advocates to create the infrastructure to make it easier to collect, analyze, and share data related to childhood cancer. We believe by enhancing data sharing, we can improve our understanding of cancer and improve outcomes. So that's information on the diagnosis, the treatment, the outcomes, the survivorship. This is often stored at hospitals and institutions where children are treated, but at different places. And it's difficult to answer scientific questions about childhood cancer because no single institution has enough data on childhood cancer to really answer these critical questions. So the vision of the CCDI is to aggregate those data so that we can learn from every child, that every child with cancer will benefit from what we learn and will take better care of our patients. That is to ensure the experience of every child who faces a cancer diagnosis can inform that understanding. So CCDI will help to achieve the goals of the STAR Act. For example, the CCDI is supporting sequencing of specimens collected through several STAR Act biobanking projects. And so we believe that the interaction between the STAR Act and the CCDI is very strong and complementary and is important effort to the president's goal of ending cancer as we know it. Another important initiative countenanced in the CCDI and STAR Act is improving health equity. This is a major effort at the National Cancer Institute. We want to make sure the benefits of treatment that we are discovering are felt by all patients with cancer, and thereby reducing disparities among outcomes among children with cancer. So as you can see, we've laid a lot of the groundwork to substantially increase the speed and scope of childhood cancer research to come. This brings me to a second reason I'm so hopeful for progress in childhood cancer research. This progress will allow us to tell many happy stories like Terran's in the future. And the reason for that is we're making rapid progress. Despite the challenges that persist and the interruption of the pandemic and the trying times we live in, we have seen remarkable recent clinical advances in cancer in general and in childhood cancer in particular. Let me highlight a few. So neurofibromatosis type 1 is a genetic disorder that causes patients to develop tumors, including these tumors called plexiform neurofibromas, which can form along the nervous system anywhere in the body. And while plexiform neurofibromas are not necessarily cancerous, they can grow throughout childhood and cause disfigurement, pain, and functional impairments, and can turn into a sarcoma, a type of cancer that's a highly worrisome complication of neurofibromatosis. So plexiform neurofibromas can be removed surgically, but it's difficult to do, and often surgery isn't an option. Interestingly, the cause of NF1 neurofibromatosis was discovered in 1990 by then a fresh-faced geneticist named Francis Collins, who is now the NIH director. Coincidentally, that discovery was the same year the Children's Inn was founded, I noted. So in the 30 years between Dr. Collins' discovery of the gene, which is mutated to cause NF1, there have been a lot of work to try and develop therapies for this congenital disorder, and none had been successful. And the impact of neurofibromatosis on patients can be quite significant. And really, thanks to the leadership of Dr. Brigitte Wiedemann in the NCI's pediatric oncology branch, who worked on this disease for more than a decade, her work culminated in a series of clinical trials that confirmed that a new drug called selumetinib would effectively shrink the tumors of these children and thereby decrease their pain and the disfiguring issue of having a tumor, and really dramatically improve their quality of life. And just last year, the FDA approved this therapy, making it the first ever effective therapy for children with NF1 that can't be, and neurofibromas that can't be surgically resected. So that is a terrific research story that was 30 years in the making, showing the power of basic science translating into an effective new therapy. And much of that development had to happen at the National Cancer Institute with the help of things like the Children's Inn, because of the unique structures to do that kind of challenges to do that kind of research that only the NCI can address. Another example is progress is we made great progress in treating B-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia, that's ALL, and lymphomas that are related, thanks to the development of chimeric antigen receptor T-cell immunotherapy. This is so-called CAR T-cell therapy, which really sounds like science fiction. It's this therapy where we take your own cells out of your body and we genetically engineer them ex vivo and then reinfuse them and turn the patient's own lymphocytes into these sort of cancer-fighting machines. And this has been quite effective for some patients with certain kinds of cancer. One of the major barriers to CAR T therapy is that few labs and centers throughout the world really have the capability to do complex manufacturing of these therapies that I described. And this has really limited our ability to test these therapies more broadly. To help address these challenges, the NCI has stood up a facility at NCI's Frederick National Lab to manufacture CAR T cells for clinical trials, conducted both at the NCI as well as across the nation at multiple hospital sites. When we talk about these advances, though, it's really important to understand that things like CAR T cells and neurofibromatosis, these things, all of these advances were made possible by basic science discoveries, in some cases years or even decades ago. And that basic science work is really foundational to making progress in cancer. And this is why I believe fervently that the United States government and the National Cancer Institute in particular need to continue to invest in the foundational discoveries of basic science that underpin these successes, and why this is still a very valuable part of the NCI mission. I am confident that we can achieve these kinds of results I've highlighted today much faster, thanks in part to investments like the Cancer Moonshot and the CCDI, as well as the collective determination of everyone here that will make this future possible. When I reflect on how far we've come and how bright the future of childhood cancer looks compared to where we've been, I am really hopeful for another reason, and this is the most important reason, and that's the people who are working on childhood cancer to make progress for our patients. So I think about the tireless work of dedicated scientists like Dr. Collins, who I mentioned, and Dr. Wiedemann, who I mentioned, and Dr. Phil Pizzo, who's one of the initial thought leaders of the Children's Inn, and Rosie Kaplan, who we saw in the video, and Dr. Kaplan's great work with childhood cancer, and the countless other scientists and physicians who work with one mission in mind every day, which is to end childhood cancer as we know it. I think about the ardent supporters of this mission, like our sponsors today. I think about members of Congress here who have mobilized such much needed resources for this effort, and everyone else here who cares passionately about children and their families, and for caring for them in what may be the most difficult times of their lives. And I think about the children and the families who face the tragedy of cancer. And I think about courageous children like Terran. And I also think about a boy named Travis, who was treated by NCI researchers at the NIH Clinical Center as part of Brigida Wiedemann's selumetinib trial. Kelly Carpenter, Travis's mother, captured best how dedicated we must be and what the payoff ultimately looks like. She tweeted, over 10 years of clinical trials, 4 rounds of experimental medicines, hundreds of blood draws, tens of thousands of miles traveled, weeks away from family, helped to create this opportunity to make life better for children facing neurofibromatosis. So it's really, these stories, it's children like Terran and Travis that have led the NCI to say nothing will stop us. Nothing will stop us in our efforts to end the scourge of childhood cancer. Before I close, I'd like to recognize the many people who brought the Children's into life and who work every day to make it the home that it is. You can help make our research at make our research at NIH and NCI possible. I can't imagine how we would do our work without you. Most importantly, you make such a difference for these families as they face the reality and potential tragedy of diseases like cancer. You provide such incredible care, such a warm and loving environment for these children and for these most vulnerable of patients. So thank you. And now I'd like to turn it back to Susan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharpless. What amazing information that you just shared with us, and the amount of progress and accomplishment that's just happening so quickly. I wanted to remind everybody that we are live this afternoon, and that if you do have a question for a presenter, please add them to the Q&A box. And if your question is for a specific presenter, please add their name. We have gotten a couple questions, so did want to chime in with one of them at least. For Dr. Sharpless, is the NCI sharing the data with private researchers, especially for the CCDI program?
Sure. Thank you for the question. That is a really important question. The National Cancer Institute has this history of generating very high quality data and making it available to all researchers in industry and academia in the United States and internationally. This was really sort of one of the major principles of data sharing behind the Cancer Genome Atlas. So this was this effort by the NCI to sequence thousands of tumors and make those data broadly available. And that was wildly successful. I don't think anybody imagined how useful that kind of data sharing would be at the beginning of the TCGA. And that has led to just countless advances in terms of prevention, screening, therapy, diagnosis. All aspects of cancer care have been profoundly impacted. So, and we have many other experiences like that by making clinical data available from our National Clinical Trials Network, or basic science data available from things like the TCGA, or many other efforts. We've learned that that kind of data sharing is incredibly useful to the research community, whether they be in industry or academia. And so that's the plan with the CCDI as well. As these efforts come together, we will make those data broadly available to all researchers, because we don't really know how people are going to use it. There are maybe some investigator out there who's got a great idea that we don't know about right now. And if only they had access to some great data that really that spoke to the genomics and outcomes of childhood cancer, they might make a really impactful discovery. So we want to empower all researchers through this kind of effort. One important condition, though, is that these are human clinical data. So we have to do that data sharing in a way that is respectful of the privacy of the individuals. And so the NCI goes to great lengths to assure that we can share data with credentialed researchers while at the same time protecting the privacy and anonymity of the research subjects.
Thank you so much. And I understand the difficulty that it is to be able to control and secure the correct information and then make public as much as you can to ensure the discoveries are happening. I did want to turn to Terran, though. Terran, your journey is remarkable. And how did you learn about NCI, and what made you want to join an NCI clinical trial and be the very first pediatric patient to try medication for mesothelioma?
First of all, thank you for having me and my father on here. It's a great opportunity. Well, I first learned about the NCI. It was my doctor at the Children's Hospital here in South Carolina. After my chemo treatments, that I received, that they did not work. So my doctors here in South Carolina and at the NIH, they did not want me to do any more chemo treatments. And that was basically the reason why I started on the clinical trial.
Excellent. So, Dr. Sharpless, Terran was the first teen to participate in Dr. Kaplan's trial at the NCI Pediatric Oncology Branch. And you've already talked about a number of exciting trials underway, but can you tell us more about the expansion of the conducting CAR T cell therapy in pediatric leukemia to the new locations? You mentioned the Frederick location, but are there other locations that the NCI is exploring as well? And how is that going to affect our future progress to be able to get this treatment out?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think it emphasizes a really important point. First of all, Terran is incredibly poised. These things are not easy to do. And, wow, she's great. So thank you for those remarks, Terran, about coming to the NCI. I think it makes clear that we have a really broad portfolio of therapies. So we have sort of the small molecules and more classical chemotherapy drugs like the trial that Terran participated in. We have antibody trials. And then we even have these newer kind of cellular therapy trials and really across the gamut where these sorts of trials make sense to be done at the National Cancer Institute. Importantly, also, a lot of these trials and trials like this are also done nationally at academic medical centers and at other centers. And so we cooperate quite a lot. So the ability to collaborate in trials between the NCI and the other centers that we fund, we support them for their trials, is a really key element of cancer research progress as well. So you touched on one specific new kind of therapeutic trial, which are these cellular immunotherapy trials, so-called CAR T cells, but there are other kinds. There's NK cells and TILs, and there's a wide zoo of cells that are being used to try and treat cancer. And they're very, very promising. So they're approved for a few kinds of hematologic cancers, and then literally thousands of trials in the works right now to develop these therapies for other kinds of cancer. And so the things are really proceeding at a rapid rate. But as I mentioned, a big problem with doing these kinds of trials is that the manufacture is complex. So really the process whereby you make the cells is the product in this instance. So it's very different from like a pill that one manufactures and sends to the patient, right? So this is a level more complicated than that. So to address this this national need for more capacity to provide CAR T cells and other kinds of cellular immunotherapy products, we built a lab, both a very state-of-the-art facility on the campus at the NCI, which is used by a number of the intramural researchers at the National Cancer Institute, as well as the lab at Frederick National Lab. So now we have multiple sites with CAR T manufacturing capability and are doing trials both in the intramural program for certain kinds of cancer at the NCI, but then also we're doing trials where we make the cells in Frederick, but then ship them to the patient. And so in this case, the way it works is the patient may be in California or Nebraska or wherever. They get phlebotomized and their cells are collected. So their cells are collected by a blood draw and they're sent to Frederick, and then Frederick genetically engineers them and then sends them back, and they're put back into the patient to try and cure their cancer. And so this really is the cutting edge of cancer research right now. As you can imagine, that process I described is very complicated. There are a number of things that can go wrong that one has to figure out to do this successfully. But really, this is the beginning of multi-institutional trials. And so now we are working to try and build capacity nationally so that many sites beyond just Frederick and the NCI will have these capabilities. And then we can really test the most promising therapies in large clinical trials with proper control arms and the way we do other kinds of clinical trials, and really advance this down the field. And I predict this is another modality that will work really, really well for some kinds of patients that we don't really have fully developed today, but I expect we will have fully developed in the very near future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharpless. I did want to go back to Terran, though. Wanted to hear about your experience at the Children's Inn and how that was for you when you came to stay.
Okay, so the first time that I came to the Children's Inn, I really don't remember it because I think I only spent one night there, and that was the night that I had to go in for surgery. But the second time that I stayed, that was when I was starting on my clinical trial.
And I just remember having to go go back and forth to the clinical center and back to the children's inn, and that's is basically where I got on my naps. And but the first time, ooh, yeah, I just don't remember.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a quick stay for the first time with only one day. I did want to ask Terrance about your experience though as a parent in being at the inn and what that meant for your family.
Yes, ma'am. Appreciate it. It was not really difficult, but we didn't know what we were going to get into because we never heard of the NIH, the Children's Inn, NCI. We never heard of any of those um, places. So when we first got here, we were treated really, really well. And from the first day, we built relationships that are lasting relationships. And to this day, we really do appreciate everything that everyone has been doing for us because they make the stay very, very easy. So it is very easy for us to say, yeah, we're going to leave our home and travel from South Carolina to Maryland to somewhere that we hardly know about and still feel comfortable and safe in getting to know people that we probably would not have known unless we were able to join you all up in Maryland, and it's been enjoyable. It really has been enjoyable. So we do appreciate everything that you all been doing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that even in the Q&A box, we are getting the hurrahs and the thanks that are coming through saying that sharing your story is really important and appreciated, especially for others that might be viewing today and might not know as much about the inn that you guys do.
Yes, ma'am. It is a very, very, as they say, what is it?
A home away from home.
Home away from home. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's exactly what it is because being there, we've, like I said, we built relationships with some of the volunteers and the workers, plus meeting some of the families that come from different parts of the world. So we built relationships there also. So it's just not us coming there to, I mean, it is good that we are able to take care of our daughter, but we do like building relationships everywhere that we go. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful place to stay.
And how have the experiences changed your perspective of cancer treatment or children diagnosed with cancer?
How my perspective changed. I can say that it has changed a lot. I can't say that I don't. I'm human, but it gave me a new perspective on not to take life for granted. Not a lot of people know this, but before I was diagnosed with cancer, I actually lost a friend who had a brain tumor, and that honestly changed me. That was my first friend that I had to, bury. So yeah, that was very challenging, but it also, in a way, gave me the strength to fight my own battle.
And how about you, Terrance? I know that you also decided to join an NCI clinical trial yourself. And what's that experience like as an adult?
Yes, ma'am. I want to, I guess, continue to comment on what Terran left off a little bit about the perspective of, cancer. A couple of, I think, I took her to that service for that young man that passed, and she told me the very same day that she never wanted to have cancer. And I think it was, what, 2 months later?
Either a month or
Yeah, a month and a half to 2 months later, here we are. So, so it really did open our eyes that, no one is counted out. So sorry about the phone ringing, but no one is counted out, and we do not take life for granted at all. Me being a firefighter, I see a lot of tragedy, a lot of things happen to a lot of other people, not thinking that it will happen to my family. So, and another thing is, a lot of people might look at commercials with kids with cancer, and they only see just a handful of kids. But when it happens to you and you go to the hospital, then you see the magnitude of kids that it does really affect. And that's one of the things that I had to learn also, that it is a lot of children and young people that are dealing with some of the worst illnesses that they have to deal with. But even with that, some of the kids that we've known, we've learned them to be some of the strongest people around also. So, but again, we do appreciate everything that you all been doing for Terran. Now, on my end, my dad, 2 of his brothers also had prostate cancer. So I am the youngest of 4. I have 2 older brothers, not thinking that it was going to end up on me, but it did. So I had to go to my local oncologist here in Sumter, South Carolina, and he told me I had prostate cancer. So the reason I ended up in Bethesda is because of the treatment that Terran received was very exceptional. So I wanted a second opinion anyway. So I called, got on one of the clinical trials for prostate cancer, and the rest is history. So I've had a very, very good experience. I stayed at the Saffra's house, not at the Children's Inn. We had to stay at the adult house because of my age, and but it was still a very, very good experience. And again, I would brag about you guys all day long. If someone asked, you would be top of the list for medical services. We really appreciate everything. We really appreciate everything. And one of my uncles that had prostate cancer, we're going to be traveling up to Silver Spring today after we get off the Zoom, because he just passed from a rare blood cancer. So we have to go up and to attend his services tomorrow.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that for your family.
Yes, ma'am.
And what a brave story you both have. I mean, you each have your own path and you have your own experience. And the NCI is right there trying to help. Dr. Sharpless, can you comment a little bit more on the new exciting developments in pediatric cancer that are resulting in treatment changes for children and their families?
Sure. I think a big part of pediatric cancer is, there are some diseases where we haven't made much progress and we need new therapies. And, I talked about things, there's just a wide variety of these, including the cellular immunotherapies or antibody drug conjugates or novel combinations of therapies and efforts to reactivate the immune system. And all of these things, are very promising, but you have to remember, cancer is a lot of different diseases. So each kind of, cancer, in some cases, some rare cancers for children may need a sort of unique solution, like a different lock, a different key for each lock. And that really is part of the challenge now, is we have so many kind of like good ideas and effective things, that pairing them together and using them correctly together, because there's surgery, there's radiation, there's chemotherapy, there's immunotherapy, there's now cellular immunotherapy. I mean, there's so many different things that sequencing those and fitting them all together is a real challenge, and a particular challenge in childhood cancer. especially in childhood cancer, where we do cure a lot of the patients. We have a lot of the patients where we make the cancer go away and never come back. So when you're able to do that, a really, really important question becomes, how can you do that in a way that's maximally effective, most likely to work, but at the same time minimizes the long-term toxicity for the child? Because you don't want to leave children with, devastating side effects from the treatment that last a lifetime. So you'd rather not put children through huge surgeries and lots of radiation and very intensive chemotherapy regimens. So a real challenge now is to fit all those good ideas together in a way that allows us to cure these children, make their disease go away and never come back, but also in a way that maximizes their future quality of life and enhances all the survivorship issues that these young children are going to have, who are going to live long lives. We want them to have very high quality, great lives. And unfortunately, we're still not able to do that in every child. A lot of children we cure have really significant survivorship challenges. And so, making both our therapies more effective and less toxic are really the key issues for the NCI right now in childhood cancer.
Thank you. I know we're getting closer to the end, and I did want to touch a little bit on the pandemic. And I wanted to ask Terran and Terrance if they've been back to the NIH and the Inn since the start of the pandemic last year.
Yes, we have.
It's been interesting, but still fun. Go ahead, Terran, if you want to say something.
Yeah. Of course, I'm gonna miss just hanging out at the front desk and just going, and seeing people's faces, and instead of seeing, a mask, and just smiling and being nice and trying not to look like a creeper. But yeah, that's the one thing that I miss. Also the dinners.
Yeah. So we learned how to order our food online, to everything. Before we even travel, we have to order our food, and the Inn will provide everything that we need. But I think the last time we were there, we had to do the COVID test. We had to stay in our room for a certain amount of time before we went out. So that was a little different. But like I said, at the same time, we understand those things must take place, and it's not a issue with us because we want to be safe. Plus, we want everyone around us that we meet to be safe also. So, but yeah, we'll be very, very, very happy when we get back to a place where we can see smiles instead of just eyes. And but it's still good to see. It's still good to see everyone when we go back.
Absolutely great. And I agree on the smiles. We need more of them these days. Dr. Sharpless, any last comments on the pandemic for ongoing trials for the pediatric cancer researchers?
Yeah, no, as you heard, the pandemic has really affected hospital operations and clinical trials. But I think it's important to note that, we have pressed on. This has actually, I think, been a very productive year in cancer research. We're still able to do these trials. We're still able to fund new research projects. We're still able to accrue patients to trials. The clinical stimulus center is still open for business for patients that need to come, through all the challenges of running a clinical center during a global pandemic. And now, that we're starting to see the fruits of widespread testing and vaccination, I do hope we can return to something that looks like more normal soon for our patients. The thing we're still worried about at the NCI is, the impact of the pandemic on cancer care today, screening and early detection and cancer therapy, that may translate into excess cancer mortality in off years. People who don't get their mammogram today may be diagnosed with cancer at a later stage that's harder to cure. So we're very interested in carefully monitoring the effects of the pandemic on cancer outcomes for both children and adults. And it's a significant issue, but we are dealing with this. And I think the great progress that we've been on in terms of cancer research, we'll get back to that soon enough.
Thank you so much. Such an excellent discussion. And wanted to say thank you personally for myself to Dr. Sharpless and Terran and Terrance. I wanted to hand it back to Bill Dayhut now to wrap us up.
Wow, this has just been incredible. You know, I think when we think about fighting cancer, we think about it being a partnership, and I think today really exemplifies exactly the partnership that we need. You know, the power of the in to keep families safe and while they can get experimental research treatment. Obviously, you know, the passion of our sponsors, the leadership of Dr. Sharpless, but most of all, I mean, I think what we heard from our patients, you know, two patients today actually, you know, the highlight, obviously, Terran and then her dad is so powerful and it's so meaningful. And I really want to thank you, Terran and Terrance. I want to thank you, Dr. Sharpless. You're an inspirational leader for all of us. You know, what you've done from for me inside the intramural program and throughout the whole NCI network is really spectacular. I want to thank our sponsors, GDIT and Dr. Castillo, all our participants, and I want everyone really to have a wonderful rest of their afternoon. Thank you.